People are trying to expand the college football playoff, but Greg Sankey doesn't seem to be having it. We'll discuss coming up next.
You are Locked On Sooners, your daily podcast on the Oklahoma Sooners. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, Sooner Nation? Welcome to Locked On Sooners, and thank you for making Locked On Sooners your first listen every single day. Shout out to all the everydayers out there tuning in and subscribe to the show wherever you get your podcasts. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. This episode is brought to you by Monarch Money. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONCollege at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year at monarchmoney.com. He's Jay Smith of Unfair Sports. I'm John Williams of Sooners Wire and USA Today Sports. We're going to discuss the ESPN Football Power Index coming up in the third segment. And Bill Belichick strikes again. Well, I guess strikes for the first time. He attempted to strike months ago, but Oklahoma was able to fend him off in the second segment. But first, college football playoff expansion has been one of the hottest topics of the offseason, as many assume it's going to get to 16 games eventually, but it doesn't look like there's going to be much of an agreement to get it there for the 2026 season.
Yeah, it sounds like they're going to scrap everything for now and then readdress it for 2026 later on this year. So we're going to have nothing but a full year of speculation of what next year's is going to look like as we kind of expected, because nobody can make decisions. The big thing here is that Greg Sankey and the SEC do not want to do the 4 automatic bids, contrary to popular beliefs. Everybody's been throwing that in the lap of the SEC as if they're the ones that pitched it and said they want to do it. The coaches in the SEC said, nah, we don't want that. We prefer the 5 plus 11 auto qualifiers, which technically means that'll be more advantageous for the SEC because the SEC is typically more superior than the other conferences like the Big Ten, the ACC, the Big 12, etc., so on and so forth. So, John, what we're seeing here is a massive power play between the Big Ten and the SEC. Big Ten wants automatic qualifiers similar to the NFL. The SEC says, nah, we don't need no auto bids. We just want to have some at-larges to go along with the 5 that's in there. So there's a chance that if we're having a really good year, we can get more teams in. If we have a bad year, sure, the Big 10 may get more teams. The Big 12 may get more teams. Cool beans. But we're not going to switch, mainly because the SEC does not want to go to a 9-game schedule right now, which is kind of surprising because there's a lot more money involved, or there's a lot more money being offered for them to do that, John. Why wouldn't they want to do that?
Well, I think a lot of it comes down to what athletic directors and coaches deem valuable. I mean, sure, could they get a few more million per game from ESPN, other networks as they broadcast a 9th conference game? Sure. But those coaches are looking at, hey, what about bowl eligibility? Like, I know bowls may not matter like they used to, and playing in the Sarsaparilla Bowl or the Gasparilla Bowl doesn't have the same ring to it as the Rose Bowl does.
Doesn't.
But playing in a bowl game is better than not playing in a bowl game. And when you add 9 more losses to the conference, that's going to create a little bit less likelihood of teams gaining bowl eligibility. And as much as we might not think that that matters, it matters. If you're Mark Stoops in Kentucky, that kind of matters. If you're Clark Lee and Vanderbilt, how huge was it that Vandy got bowl eligibility last year? And so that's the big hangup. Big Ten saying, hey, we want 4 automatic qualifiers for our conference, for the SEC. But in order to make this equitable, we need the SEC to go to 9 conference games. And Greg Sankey's like, why would we want to do it the same way as you? We've been on top of college football for the last decade and a half. Yes, you got the last 2, but let's not forget who's kind of set the tone for the growth of college football, and it's been the SEC. So I get why Greg Sankey is like, we don't need to do that. That's not necessarily something that's in our favor, in our benefit, because if you look at the top 16 teams from the 2024 playoff rankings, you're looking at maybe 6 SEC teams making it into the field if you have a 5 and 11 format.
The 9-game one is interesting to me because it kind of goes against everything that we've seen with expansion and everything, mainly because the whole purpose of the expansion is the money. Everybody was doing this to follow the mighty dollar. And ESPN has offered up big money for the SEC to do that. And they're just like, nah, we prefer to keep it at 8. But I do like the fact that they do require one I guess you say a P5, P4 opponent to be in your non-con, and then, lighter games in between there. Because, we talked about this before. College football does not have a preseason. So that first couple of weeks is usually kind of gross because teams are trying to figure themselves out. You'll realize, like, for example, Clemson, they looked awful to start the year off. They got destroyed by Georgia. And then they went on a run and looked a lot better as the season progressed. Then, they lost in the playoffs, but they won their conference. You get that a lot more often in college football because you don't have that preseason to really warm yourselves up. You may get throttled by a team that's a little bit more prepared, a little bit more experienced, and then you may build experience throughout the season. So Greg Sankey talking about the SEC not really getting not wanting to go into a 9-gamer. It makes sense for them to not want to beat up on each other. I would really like for them in the Big Ten to just get this scheduling thing down so that we can get past the idea of a larger conference schedule and just make it to where you're cross-pollinating between the two biggest conferences and actually have a matchup. Now, I don't want it to be bottom-feeding matchups, right? I don't need Ohio State playing against Vanderbilt. I don't need Rutgers playing against Georgia. Give me the top teams playing against each other, and give me the middle teams playing against each other, and give me the lower tier teams playing against each other, and just kind of gradually go from there. But yeah, this is going to get messy over time, John. I expect it to really get messy soon.
What's interesting about this is nobody's talking about the ACC
at all, or the Big 12.
Like the Big 12 plays 9 conference games, but nobody talks about the ACC needing to move to 9 conference games.
Well, the Big Ten did mention them. They said the SEC and the SEC and the ACC both need to move to 9.
Okay, the Big Ten might have mentioned it, but I don't hear any media talking about it. Nobody's out there saying the ACC needs to do this. So why would the SEC need to do this? And you look at, like, over the last 25 years of college football, the ACC, I know they may have taken a bit of a step back in popularity and in national championships and production, but I mean, Clemson has a couple. Miami had one. Virginia Tech was a power from 2000 to 2010. Like, they've had some really good football. And aside from the SEC, I mean, they're a very good conference. So it's not like they need to sit back and be like, no, we got to go to 9 conference games. Aside from the media rights package that they agreed to that really set them up for long-term struggles, there's not really any need for them to go do the same thing. Because I think what having 8 conference games really allows you to do is just be more flexible in your non-con. It allows you to be a little bit more aggressive and a little bit more competitive, where Texas can play Ohio State and Oklahoma can play Michigan, things like that. Yes, Ohio State and Michigan are scheduling those games, but Penn State's not scheduling those games. Don't go look at Penn State's schedule, because that's going to shock you. That is soft non-conference, and nobody's doubting them. Nobody's discounting what they're capable of. A lot of people think they're the number 1 team in the nation going into 2025, and they play nobody in non-conference. So I'm not going to sit here and say the SEC needs to have a more competitive schedule by adding a 9th game, because they're already incredibly competitive schedules. Yeah. And I think going to 5 automatic qualifiers based on conference champions and 11 at-large bids is the thing that makes the most sense. It allows for, your Cinderella to come in and steal an at-large. It allows for Notre Dame to still have their place at, in the top 6. Probably they'd be that number 6 team, unless they go to this idea of where you're seeding based on ranking. You're not seeding based on conference championships and things like that. Notre Dame still has a place at the table.
Yeah.
Well, I don't need the SEC to go to 9 conference games. Would it be more fun as a fan? Yeah, but I also like the fact that we're scheduling competitively in non-conference.
Yeah, that's what's critical to me. I want to see big games outside of the conference. It kind of helps for the conference to measure themselves up against everybody that year, that you could say, oh, okay, the SEC does deserve more respect because they went out and their top teams beat the other schools' top teams, other conferences' top teams. So yes, they are the big dogs this year. Big 10 does it, sure. Big 12 follows up with it, sure. Whatever. Whoever wins the games, you can give them a little bit more respect in the rankings by seeing what their conference did. And that's the reason why I would like to have better non-con games going forward, because then you'll be able to have a better measuring stick as to which teams and which conference is actually at the top that year.
Well, I think the non-conference games drive the sport just as much as the conference games do.
Yeah.
These big early season matchups that we're going to see, they're huge for the promotion of college football, and they create so much buzz, especially as we get closer to week 1. I mean, those first few weeks of the season are going to be fantastic football. What's not so fantastic? Oklahoma lost a player that was committed to them in the 2026 recruiting class. We're going to discuss that coming up next and talk about what Oklahoma's plans are going to be to replace Will Conroy. And today's episode is brought to you by Monarch Money. Ever check your bank account and wonder, where did all my money go? Between dining out, online shopping, and entertainment, it's easy to lose track. That's where Monarch Money comes in, your personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money isn't just a budgeting app, it's a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, investments, and spending in one place, so you stop just managing your money and you start building wealth. Instead of juggling multiple apps, I can use Monarch to check my finances, track my spending, and even plan long-term goals. Managing money with my spouse is smoother than ever. I don't have to worry about going in and logging into all these different apps. We can track each other's spending and we can set goals to stay on the same page without the stress of not knowing where all the money's at. So take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONCollege at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONCollege for half off your first year over at monarchmoney.com. Thanks again for making Locked On Sooners your first listen every single day. Shout out to all the everydayers out there. Tune in and subscribe to the show wherever you get your podcasts. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Bill Belichick tried to be a thorn in Oklahoma's side back in the winter transfer portal season, swooping in at the 11th hour to try and steal John Mateer away. Wasn't able to do it, but did get Will Conroy, the interior offensive lineman that now plays his ball down at IMG Academy, to flip from Oklahoma to North Carolina.
I'm going to be honest. This smells of a Jim Nagy situation. Let me explain what I mean. Will's been committed to Oklahoma since December. He's one of the second ones of the 26 class. Jonathan Hatton was the first one because, he just committed out of nowhere like in 2024. Like, who's this dude? But he loved DeMarco. And, he ended up committing early. And so Will commits in December. Then you hire Jim Nagy, and then you start to see a lot of shifting and changing into the players that are on our list, the players that we're going after, the players that we are pushing for. And this feels like one of those circumstances where, because I saw Will ended up taking a visit to North Carolina. I'm like, where'd this come from? I haven't seen or heard or read anything about him even having any interest in going anywhere. And the next thing you know, he goes to North Carolina. I'm like, okay, he's probably going to flip. Sure enough, John, right afterwards, Will Conroy flips, and now he's going to North Carolina. So it doesn't feel like it sucks to lose him because Oklahoma was excited about him when he committed in December. But it kind of does feel like we were shifting our priorities, especially heading into this coming weekend.
It's a different ball game now that you have Jim Nagy as your general manager. Everything we thought about what Oklahoma's 2026 recruiting class was going to be has shifted, and that's okay. When you have a GM, whether it's at the NFL or the collegiate level, they're going to have their own priorities. They're going to have their own evaluations, and there's a place where their evaluations and the coaching evaluations have to meet, and they have to blend, and they have to match up. But this just seems like one of those things that he was a pre-Nagy guy, and they have been heavily pursuing some other interior offensive linemen. Noah Best, they got that commitment last week. They're also pursuing Deacon Schmidt, who I think everybody projects as an interior offensive lineman as well, 4-star prospect in the 26 class. And they're going to continue to build along the interior. They've got a good young core of offensive linemen already on campus right now, and they just have to continue to stack those talents. Would you have liked to have Will Conroy in the class? Sure.
Yeah.
at the same time, how many of these guys are they going to take? So if they were prioritizing Noah Best, Deacon Schmidt, and things are trending in a positive direction for Deacon Schmidt, his commitment comes a little bit later this month, I believe. If that's the case and you're prioritizing those two guys, it's understandable why you might lose a flip and why you might lose a commitment to UNC. I think Will Conroy is still a good player. It's just how many interior offensive linemen are you going to take when you've got Heath Ozida, Eddie Pierre-Louis, Daniel Akinkumi, Ryan Foje, Sean Hutton, Owen Hollenbeck. Like, you've got a good young core of interior offensive line players that are freshmen, sophomores, redshirt sophomores that you can continue to build with.
Yeah, you kind of want it though to continue the quote unquote pipeline to IMG Academy, or at least having a connection. Sure. But I do know they got the new coach there, and if I'm correct, he has some ties to Bill Belichick and all of them. So I think he coached at Ohio State at one point. He has some ties to Belichick. So you put yourself in a circumstance where you're missing out on, like I said, the opportunity for trying to get players in from that academy, which, if I'm correct, there's an Oklahoma kid that's headed there to play his senior year or junior, senior year sometime soon. So it's quite common that you see kids head over to IMG Academy, especially targets that Oklahoma's going after. So you want to be able to have that connection and tie, but at the same time, if you got a coach that's got connections with, like I said, Belichick and Ohio State and other schools, kind of miss out. But at the same time, as you pointed out, we've got players that we're developing on that, but I think Oklahoma actually has like 4 or 5 players that they're into right now, and really are in the trenches with when it comes to recruiting. So I think you'll see the replacement for Will Conroy populate probably this weekend. So I'm not actually concerned about what players need that, if Oklahoma's going to get anybody. They've got like 3 or 4 interior offensive linemen that they've been very high on over the last few weeks that we've seen show up throughout June in these official visits. That I think the Oklahoma Sooners are going to end up landing one of them and just adding to this class. Heck, Deacon Schmidt's about to commit, in the next week? Keep your eyes open on that one, because I think Oklahoma has a really good chance of snatching him out of the state of Colorado.
And so this is going to be an ever-evolving process. We are seeing this 26 class take shape a little bit more so over the last month, 5 weeks. I mean, they've added 6 guys to the class in the last, or maybe it's 7 even. Since Nico Jandro committed back in early May, there's been an influx into the class, and you're going to continue to see more and more guys committing and more names pop up in the 26 cycle. Again, as Nagy and his staff do their due diligence on those talents they believe are going to have not just SEC football traits, but NFL traits, guys they believe they can develop into big time players. You're going to see that. So you might see another under the radar guy that pops up on their radar that they really, really like. But yeah, again, I'm not concerned about offensive line recruiting for Oklahoma. If anything, I feel like it's gotten better over the last several years. You were just young last year. That's really what it came down to. Young, inexperienced, and you had guys that were still in the developmental process playing significant snaps for you. But I think what we're seeing on the depth chart now is what Oklahoma is intending for their offensive line to look like, not just in 2025, but in the years to come.
Yeah, and even looking at it, so to clarify what I was talking about before, Billy Miller is the former head coach of IMG Academy that's now on the staff there at North Carolina under Bill Belichick. I remember someone moved there. So his assistant coach is now the new head coach, but there's a pipeline there. There's a pipeline from there.
As long as Jake Krill doesn't land at North Carolina.
Yeah, that's all that matters. We don't really care. Jake's the only one that I really care. And he's on pace to end up in Norman this weekend. So he'll be at the Champ U barbecue. So yeah, Jake Krill's probably the only player that I care about truly like needing to make sure he makes that visit, because he's the one that I know Oklahoma is. That's the top of the Sooners list, is getting a big time edge like him. Of course, they're chasing other defensive linemen and offensive linemen, but yeah, I need Jay Cruel to get there. But yeah, I mean, give it to IMG. I mean, it's smart for Belichick to hire the former head coach there and bring him on staff. Now Belichick's got himself a little bit of pipeline there. We just got to continue to work. But I know that Oklahoma's got a lot of big-time irons in the fire. You still got Maxwell Robinson out of Derby, Kansas, that it appears Oklahoma is starting to get some headway on, the 6'4", 270-pounder. Of course, Noah Best is already in. I know Brett Colajay is one that they've been chasing after. He is friends with Deacon Schmidt. So if you can get Colajay and Schmidt together, and Colajay is also at IMG Academy, you bring them in together, hey, could be something big. Or you could go back to swinging at the fences at a Drew Evers. There's so many interior offensive linemen you can go after that Oklahoma has been in on, that if they just, go ahead and if they feel comfortable and feel like they've got good positioning right now with some players, I could totally understand why the Will Conroy piece doesn't sting as much.
Yep. So we'll see what happens. Again, big recruiting weekend coming up this weekend with the Champ U Barbecue. We'll discuss that more on Friday's episode of Locked On Sooners to kind of get you ready and get you primed up for that. Coming up next, we're going to discuss the ESPN Football Power Index and what it says about the Oklahoma Sooners here on Locked On Sooners. Once again, thanks for making Locked On Sooners your first listen every single day. Shout out to all the everydayers. Tune in and subscribe to the show wherever you get your podcasts. We're free and available on all podcast platforms and on YouTube. So hit that subscribe button and that notification bell to let you know when new episodes drop. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Jay, the ESPN Football Power Index is a nice little metric to look at. It runs a lot of simulations. It takes into account recent recruiting, recent success, and returning production. And let's just go down the list here, and we'll look at where the SEC stacks up. So the top 5 in the SEC: Texas, Georgia, Alabama, Texas A&M, and Tennessee. Jay, if you're looking at the ESPN Football Power Index and you're looking at the top 5 there, are there any surprises to you?
No, I mean, everybody's extremely high on Texas because they're recruiting over the last few years. Same thing with Alabama and Georgia. So I expected those. Ohio State, of course, we knew was going to be up there. I mean, to me, the fact that Ohio State's not top 5 is kind of weird. Tennessee being top 5 is a little bit wild to me as well. But hey, I would not have expected Tennessee to be as high as they are, especially after the Nico Iamaleama drama. I would have expected that Tennessee would have fallen a little bit more. But the expectations their defense is still going to be solid. I expected Texas A&M to be a bit higher though too. To be honest, I thought Texas A&M would have been probably above Alabama because the recruiting for both of them. I mean, Texas A&M didn't lose as many players as Alabama did when Saban retired, but again, both of them had done a really good job of recruiting over the years. So top 5, not really that surprising out of the SEC of what we've seen.
Did you just create a new nickname for Nico?
Iamaleama?
Drama.
La Drama. There you go.
Yeah.
Liama Drama.
All right. Drama. 6 through 10 in the SEC, and this is where your Oklahoma Sooners will come in. Number 6, the LSU Tigers. Number 7, Ole Miss. Number 8, Auburn. Number 9, South Carolina. And number 10, Oklahoma. What surprises you when you look at that list, Jay?
And what's funny is that the top 10 in the SEC that's up to number 16 in college football in general.
Yep.
That's the thing that's probably that's wild, if anything. No, and I mean, I know a lot of people are high on Auburn. We'll talk through and break down those opponents probably sometime next week to give something really good to talk about. But do I or you truly expect Auburn to really be that good without knowing what they actually have yet? I mean, I know that their line's a little bit more veteran. We talked about a little bit of that stuff, but Auburn feels like the computers like them, and we'll let them have that. The computers like Oklahoma too. It keeps Oklahoma right in the middle of the pack. Every year, Oklahoma always maintains middle of the pack, and it's mainly because it has a very high blue chip ratio. So for Oklahoma for the Sooners to fall out of that, the blue chip ratio have to drop, and I don't see that happening over the next few years. So I mean, it checks out. Auburn still is kind of surprising to me. Like, what are we doing there?
Yeah, Auburn and South Carolina to me seem a little bit rich, but still you're talking about the number 8 and 9 team. You're not talking about top 5. So LSU, not surprising. If there's a team in that group that I think could be top 5 in the computer rankings, it'd be LSU, because Brian Kelly does a pretty good job on the recruiting trail. They have had some recent success. They've had a lot of good production. They've got good returning production. So I think what surprised me a little bit about South Carolina is they lost a lot on their defense.
Yeah.
They don't have a ton of returning production, but they do bring back a Lenora Sellers. They bring back
they don't have Rocket
Harbor, like some good offensive talent.
But their run game is where my question is at, though.
Yeah.
We ain't got Rocket. But I think Lenora Sellers is going to be the do-it-all guy anyway. He's capable of it. We've seen quarterbacks in the SEC do that numerous times. Yep. And so as long as he goes out there and does it, he's going to be the problem by himself. So I don't think not having much of a run game will be too much of a problem, because you have to respect Sellers' legs. So every team's going to have to pay attention to that as well. To me, they should have been the computer should have liked them a lot more than Auburn. I just put it that way.
Yeah. Yeah, I'd probably put them above Auburn as well. And then 11 through 16, you got Florida, Arkansas, Missouri, Kentucky, Mississippi State, and Vanderbilt. Man, Missouri fans talking a lot for a team that's ranked 13th in the SEC in the ESPN Football Power Index.
They're behind Arkansas. Ew. And they're probably barely above Kentucky as I go look at it now. Yeah, they're right there on Arkansas's tail. Arkansas's 22, Missouri's 23. That's kind of stinky. But Florida actually is a lot lower than I would have expected. So many people are so high on DJ Lagway. I would have thought that he would have propelled them at least enough to put them in the top close to 15. I would have not expected them to be this low, but I mean, there's not very many non-SEC teams in the top 16 in general. So, I mean, 10 of them are SEC teams, the other 6, everybody else. Then when you add Florida in there at 18, they just add Michigan in between there. I mean, 11 of the top 18 teams is in the SEC. Checks out. Now let's see us do it on the field. I need Florida to go out there. I need Florida to cook Florida State. I need them to beat up on Miami, beat your in-state rivals. That way, all of this shows consistently, and nobody can complain.
Yeah, and I don't really have much issue with Oklahoma being above a team like Florida or a team like Arkansas. You know, Arkansas had a bit of a resurgent year last year. With Florida, I think I need to see Billy Napier do it again, or at least have as good of a year as they had last year with DJ Lagway. And for Oklahoma, again, you know, being at number 10, again, this comes back to 2 and 3 seasons under Brent Venables. You've had 6 and 7 years. It's going to take into account some of that history a little bit. So Oklahoma not having much of a defense back in 2022, not having an offense in 2024, that plays into this. So at some point, if they can find better balance like they had in 2023, this is a team that's better than the 10th best team in the SEC. And I think that's what they're putting together. And that's what they have to go prove. They have to go prove that they're better than the 10th best team in the SEC as the computers see it. And I think they are. I think they're, are they going to be number 1 or 2? We'll see. Jay shaking his head. For those of you that aren't watching on YouTube, he shook his head. So for all of you that say we're sunshine pumpers out here, let's keep it real. I said, will they be number 1 or 2? And Jay immediately shook his head no. So there you go. We're not sunshine pumping everything. But I very much believe that they could be one of the top 5 teams in the SEC in 2025, flirting for a college football playoff spot. And then who knows, man, if they reach their ceiling, they could be in the SEC title game. But that's if they reach their ceiling.
Yeah, they reach their ceiling. Their ceiling truly is making it to the SEC championship game. That is, this team has the capabilities. It can be on the table. They just got to continue to win. So not saying that it will happen, not saying that it won't happen, just saying that that is a possibility based upon the way this roster is constructed. This team is built to be able to make that run. So We'll see though. I am just like everybody else. Wait and see. Now I will give you the data, and I have no problem with breaking down the reasons why it is a very much possibility based upon historical facts and numbers. I will give you that. While at the same time, I'm gonna be realistic, just like all you other fans, and say I need to see it done though. But what else are we gonna talk about? We gotta pump it.
I mean, for me, most importantly, I need to see this offensive line return to at least the 2023 version of the Oklahoma Sooners offensive line. If they're that good,
Yeah.
if they're that good, then this team is going to be really, really good.
That's true.
And
Good point.
if they're not that good, this team can still be plus in the win column. I just don't know if they'll be contending for a conference title or making the college football playoff.
Yeah, that's a good point. We don't know. We'll see.
Can't wait to find out. We are probably about 6 weeks away from fall camp, which means we're like, what did you say, 9 Saturdays from the start of the
Roughly 10-ish. Yeah.
season. It's going to come so quick, and we're thankful for you being here with us all off season long as we break down the 2025 Oklahoma Sooners. Let us know, what do you think the ceiling is for Oklahoma in 2025? What's the floor for them? Are you down in the dumps? You think that they're going to have another losing season, or do you think they're going to contend for a college football playoff berth or more? Let us know on YouTube, in the social medias. You can follow us at Locked On Sooners on all of your favorite social media platforms. Go follow Jay at Unfair Sports. Go check out his channel, Unfair Sports, over on YouTube. You can follow me at John9Williams and read my work covering the Sooners over at SoonersWire.com. The show is at Locked On Sooners, again, on all of your favorite social media platforms. But until next time, he's Jay, I'm John. We'll talk to you then. Boomer
Sooner.
I just need an offensive line to push some people around.